What if we told you that there's a small island off the coast of China with enough firepower to potentially take down not just China, but the entire world? It sounds crazy, right? But it might not be as far-fetched as you think. Welcome to our channel. And today let's find out what would happen if this tiny island fell into the wrong hands. This is an island less than 200 miles off the coast of mainland China, so close that on a clear day you can see China from its shores. The island belongs to Taiwan, which has been self-governing since 1949 after the defeated nationalists fled there from mainland China. Today, it's a fully realized country with its own flag, passport, currency, and government. However, the People's Republic of China sees things differently. They view Taiwan as a breakaway province that will eventually return to the fold, by force if necessary. According to Chinese President Xi Jinping, Taiwan's reunification with mainland China is a question not of if, but when. When that happens, though, could the whole world end? Now, before we go any further, we need to answer a very important question. Why do so many people care so much about Taiwan? After all, it's just a small island off the coast of China. It probably won't surprise you to learn that the answer to this question lies in Taiwan's microchips. You see, while Taiwan is a small island, only around 23 million people live there. It also has a pretty small military. At only 164,000 active soldiers, it's smaller than the armies of most developed nations. So why does the world care so much about Taiwan? The answer is simple. Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, or TSMC for short. This company designs and manufactures the world's most advanced semiconductors, components that are at the heart of every electronic device that you use every day, from your cell phone to your laptop to even your car. In fact, these microchips have become so important that they've been dubbed the new oil. These chips are what make modern life possible. Without them, you wouldn't be able to use any of the devices that you rely on every day. That means without Taiwan's TSMC, we would struggle to function as a modern society. And that's why it's so important. In recent years, the United States has become increasingly concerned about its reliance on Taiwan for its microchips. As such, the U.S. has tried to reduce its dependence on Taiwan by building up its domestic semiconductor industry. However, these efforts have so far proven to be fruitless, as the U.S. isn't able to produce chips as advanced as those coming out of Taiwan. To make matters worse, China also desperately wants control of Taiwan and its microchip industry. For obvious reasons, this has led the U.S. to grow increasingly worried about the possibility of China invading Taiwan and taking control of its microchip industry for itself. But first, how likely is such an invasion? Well, according to experts at the RAND Corporation, the likelihood of China invading Taiwan in the next 6 years is around 9%. And while that may sound low, it's actually pretty high for an event of this magnitude. Let's explore what would happen if China did invade Taiwan and make it part of its territory. Let's start with the basics. How would China even go about taking over Taiwan? One of the most likely ways that this would happen is through a full-scale military invasion. Given the size of China's army, which stands at nearly 2 million active soldiers, compared to Taiwan's measly $164,000, this would be a fairly easy victory for China. Once Chinese troops had landed in Taiwan, they would quickly overwhelm the Taiwanese military and take control of the island. But what would happen once China took control of Taiwan? Would the rest of the world end as we know it? The answer, sadly, is yes. You see, once China took control of Taiwan, it would gain access to some of the most advanced microchips in the world. This would give it a massive advantage over the rest of the world in terms of technology. It could use these chips to build better weapons, faster computers, and more efficient solar panels. In short, it could use them to leapfrog itself ahead of the rest of the world in terms of technology. And the worst part is that there's not much the rest of the world could do about it. China is simply too big and too powerful for any other nation to take on militarily. Even if the U.S. and its allies were to try to stop China, they would be no match for the Chinese military. In addition to its large size and advanced technology, China also has a few other advantages over the rest of the world. First and foremost, it has a huge population, around 1.4 billion people. This gives it a massive pool of workers to draw from, meaning it could build more ships, tanks, and planes than any other nation. Additionally, China is home to some of the world's most prolific universities and research institutions. This means it has a steady pipeline of new talent coming in. Finally, China is sitting on a treasure trove of natural resources. It has the world's largest known reserves of coal and rare earth metals, which are used to make everything from magnets to smartphones. With all of these advantages on its side, it's easy to see why China would be so eager to take control of Taiwan, and the rest of the world would be powerless to stop it. Now let's say that China invades and takes control of Taiwan. What would happen to the global economy? Well, things would start off pretty bad, as the global economy relies heavily on the microchips produced by TSMC. Without access to these chips, companies would struggle to manufacture new products, leading to shortages and higher prices. This would cause chaos in the global economy and lead to a recession or even a depression. Eventually, though, China would begin to reap the benefits of having the world's most advanced microchips at its fingertips. Its tech companies would be able to produce better, cheaper products that would quickly dominate the global market. This would lead to China becoming the world's dominant economic power, and the other nations would struggle to compete. China's dominance wouldn't just be economic either, it would also be military. Thanks to the advanced microchips, China would be able to develop new weapons that would make it virtually invincible. This would lead to the other nations of the world forming a sort of alliance in order to try to stop China. But even this wouldn't work. China was simply too powerful, its military was too strong, and its economy was too advanced. Eventually, the rest of the world would be forced to submit to China's dominance. So what would this new world look like? Well, it would look a lot like a dystopia straight out of a sci-fi novel. China would be the dominant world power, and the other nations would be little more than puppets. There would be no more freedom of speech or democracy. Instead, there would be constant surveillance and oppression. Thankfully, this is nothing more than a hypothetical scenario. It's highly unlikely that China will ever invade Taiwan. However, it's still a possibility that we should be aware of. Now let's talk about another way that Taiwan could fall, namely through a so-called soft invasion. This is where China slowly but surely takes control of Taiwan without firing a single shot. The way it works is pretty simple. China would simply start to exert more and more influence over Taiwan's government until it effectively controlled the island. This could be done through a variety of means, such as through economic pressure, blackmail, or even bribery. While this sort of invasion would be more difficult for China, it's also more likely to happen. If this were to occur, the rest of the world wouldn't end as we know it. There would still be other powerful nations like the United States, India, and Japan. However, China would become the dominant power in Asia and would be able to exert a great deal of influence over the rest of the world. Now here's where things get interesting. What if the world ended not with a bang, but with a whimper? What if the world ended not through war or invasion, but through something far more subtle, namely climate change? Climate change is one of the greatest threats facing the planet today. It is already causing rising sea levels, more extreme weather events, and mass extinctions. If left unchecked, it will eventually make the planet uninhabitable. And Taiwan is no exception. As sea levels rise, the island will become more and more prone to flooding. This will displace millions of people and cause widespread destruction. If this continues, it could eventually render the island unlivable. And if that happened, the world would indeed come to an end as we know it. The global economy would collapse, chaos would ensue, and humanity would be set back centuries. Thankfully, this is also nothing more than a hypothetical scenario. We have the knowledge and the technology to prevent climate change from getting to this point. All we need is the will to take action. What do you think would happen if Taiwan fell into the wrong hands? Let us know in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out more content like it. See you next time.